Welcome to the Win All Day Everyday podcast, presented by Prairie Hockey Academy. We are in our 11th week, Justin. It's unbelievable that this is taken off this far. I thought maybe get one or two episodes in, and here we are, episode 11. My mind's blown.
Yeah, we persevere pretty good. We're a good group, but yeah, we're at episode 11. It's been a blast. I think the first 10 have been fun. You know, shame on us. It took us to episode 11 to get the guest we have in studio with us today. As we were kind of joking about earlier, I mean, he made it on Sportsnet before he made it on the Win All Day Everyday podcast, and that's on us. And so thrilled to have Dustin Friesen with us in studio.
Yeah. And this, by the way, is Justin Simpkins. He's the director of Prairie Hockey Academy. My name is Barrett Kropp. I'm the head coach of the U15 prep team at PHA and also general manager. And we're thrilled to have our U18 head coach and director of performance with us today, Dustin Friesen. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I've been kind of following along, and the episodes have been great so far, and I've really enjoyed them. So I'm excited to be on here.
Now, just a quick, snapshot of Dustin's, storied career. We'll get into some highlights from it. But everywhere you've been, I'm sure that, probably in kindergarten you were the captain of the class there too. But at 888 Beardies, Swift Current Broncos, UNB Varsity Reds, over the American League, over to Europe, captain everywhere you were. Just spoke high volumes of your leadership and whatnot. You had a fantastic journey all the way from the northern Saskatchewan minor hockey route all the way to spending significant time in Germany. What a hockey journey!
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate to be able to have had the opportunities that I've had, and the people that helped me get there. So yeah, I mean, I'm really appreciative and thankful for the places that I stopped along the way. And like I said, I've met, there's a lot of people that helped me get there, but there's a lot of fantastic people that we met, both me and my wife, and our stops later on in my career. So, but yeah, no, it's a lot of valuable lessons learned along the way, I guess. So.
Yeah, and maybe just as we're gonna start to unpack a bit of your hockey journey. We'll start maybe at Beardies and on to Swift Current and whatnot. There's a book out there called Captain's Class, and it's the story of like how captains establish incredible culture to make some of the world's most remarkable teams, written by Sam Walker. And when I think back and I look at your elite prospects and know some of your story of where you've been, culture of excellence has to be part of everything that you've been a part of, because I see it every day at Prairie Hockey Academy. And so when I hear that you've been a captain everywhere you've been, what are some of the things of excellence and some of the culture pieces that you've brought in as a leader, even going back to your AAA days?
Put me on the spot here, Barrett. I don't know. Honestly, I think my upbringing had a lot to do with that. Both, how I was raised by my parents, but also growing up on a farm. Where it's not that a farming's life is easier now, but, I remember growing up and, everything that we did, it had to be carried by a 5-gallon pail. So hard work was kind of it was just there, and you had to do it. And so I was kind of, at times when I was that age, I didn't like it, but I was kind of like the hired man on the farm and stuff. And so I guess just growing up, I guess that was kind of one of the main principles to me playing hockey is, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it as hard as I possibly can, and just be a good teammate. I guess I think that's one of the things I've kind of carried along with me throughout the way. And I've had a lot of really good teammates to look up to. I think that's one of the biggest things is that you learn from others. I've had some really good examples of people that have kind of gone before me, and then you just try to do your best to kind of follow those good examples. So
yeah, I mean, it like I said, the journey that you've had of being a captain everywhere you've been is remarkable, and we're gonna talk about some of those things when it comes to even at your university career with Gardner McDougall and how he brought you in there, and how your journey went over to Europe. I've had some interaction with Gardner, and we'll get into some of those stories at the end of our episodes here. But talk about your journey then to PHA. Like you finished up some time in Germany there. Maybe had some question marks on how long do I play? Is my body going to tolerate any more years? Or at what point did you consider coaching and getting into being an influencer on this side of the schedule?
I think I always knew I was going to coach in some in some way, shape, or form. When I went to the University of New Brunswick, one of my degrees was teaching, and so I knew I was going to teach. I knew I was going to be some kind of training, some aspect in strength and conditioning, but I knew I was going to coach. I really enjoyed that part of it. And so even along the way, whether it was helping out with spring hockey or just helping out as I got farther along in my career, just helping out younger players. After practice, trying to be a mentor to them, whether it's, working on a specific skill on the ice or, off the ice conversations, those kind of things. I think that was just kind of the things that that kind of helped me just kind of learn. But I think deep down, I did know that I was going to coach. And so I remember even, going through, the first time I got up into the American League, and I remember, every coach that I kind of met along the way, just writing down every one of their practices and writing down systems. And so I was doing that just when I was, just out of college and stuff. And so I really enjoyed that part of it. Just again, learning from others and how they viewed the games. And it wasn't always things that I agreed with or that I liked. And so I think you kind of sift through the things that work for you and the things that maybe you would change. So.
Yeah, it's great to have that learning environment, just being a lifelong learner. Because if I heard you right, you said one of my degrees. Does that mean like you're super smart with multiple degrees now?
No, it's not at all. It's but I did a kin degree when I was in University of New Brunswick as well. So So I have my kin degree, I have my education degree, and so I think teaching is coaching, teaching is the strength and conditioning, and so it's all related and goes hand in hand. So
yeah. That's great. It speaks of your willingness to be a lifelong learner. That's awesome that I see you pass that on to your players now.
I think, one piece, this is Dustin's 4th season with us as a head coach with the U18 prep program. And, but I met him, I think 7 years ago for the first time. And so sometimes people ask, how'd you get Dustin? I was like, well, I courted him for 3 years. And I remember meeting for the first time, offering him a job, and he was like, well, I might sign a contract renewal, signed a renewal. Met him the next summer with Derek Zacharias, kind of talked to me, you ready yet? He actually broke his ribs in playoffs. So I was like, hey, this is good. He's kind of like, I'm not recovering as fast as I used to as I get older. I don't know. Signs a new contract. Goes back again. And it took a bit of a pandemic to get him to say yes. But thrilled to have him here. And, each of those years he'd go back. And I actually didn't even realize it at the time. He was the team captain. I was like, well, of course he's going to sign another contract. And so it was a process to get him here. Yeah,
I guess, I've always kind of, believed that doors open and close for a reason. And, when COVID did hit, it was kind of, when we were over in Europe, it was kind of like, okay, this thing's going on, this COVID thing's going on. And then all of a sudden we finished the regular season, and then we were starting playoffs right away. And it's like, okay, we're having playoffs, but no fans. And then in 2 days, it was like, okay, playoffs is canceled, get in a flight, get out of the country as fast as possible. So it was really, really quickly. Thankfully, my family was back home in Saskatchewan already, so I didn't have to, so very, very thankful they weren't kind of part of that kind of madness and stuff like that. But it was crazy how fast that happened. And I did have a contract to go back, but with COVID and the league's over there being really heavily sponsored, by different companies. It was just a tough situation to know if the league was going to go and if contracts were being fully filled. And so they played that year like a lot of other leagues without fans and stuff like that. So, and they didn't start the league until December. And so there was a lot of unknowns for me. And at that point in my life and having, like I said, a young family, it was important that we'd move around quite a bit. And, I think it was a great opportunity for my family and my girls, just that resiliency and just being able to adapt, and they would still have some memories there. But I do think it was the right timing for me to kind of find a spot. And, we were really blessed and fortunate that, Justin was still willing to have us here. And, like I said, doors opened and closed with the right timing. And so we're really fortunate. So.
See, that perseverance pays off, right? We made it to episode 11 too, right? Right, the podcast.
We'll talk about your PHA experience here in a minute, but I just want to talk about that. You touched on it very briefly about your upbringing and growing up on the farm. As a captain everywhere you've been, who are some of your early influences on like that shaped you to be that kind of a leader? You touched on it. I'm sure it was your parents, but was there maybe a coach coming up or maybe even in junior, it was a coach that just really, set you on that path to being like, no, that I got to be a guy that chases excellence every time.
Yeah, like I definitely had some mentors along the way for sure, and I think like Justin mentioned him before, but Derek Zacharias, he was actually a principal at our school when I was in high school for a long time, and I really looked up to him. And he was just he didn't talk a lot, and he was like, but he's an actions first kind of guy, and just everyone respected him. And I think to me, I really appreciated that, and I really looked up to that. And so I think me growing up and coming through junior and coming through college, I think that was just something that I just really wanted. I just really craved that, is just kind of be an actions first kind of person, and just really want to treat people the right way and stuff. And so I think that's just that was really important to me kind of growing up. And so Zach for sure. And then also there's when I was 17, this guy was a year older than me, but his name is Ben Andres. And he was just, again, he was the hardest worker that I played with in junior. And he was the hardest worker in the gym, he's the hardest worker in practice, he's the hardest worker in the games. And his teammates just respected him because of that. And again, he wasn't the loudest guy, but when he did speak, guys listened because he just brought it every day, and he just led by example. And so, I think those are two earlier influences that I think kind of just led me to really prioritizing those things. So.
That's great.
And Ben would have been with the Swift Current Broncos. You guys played together, right? And he went on to Toronto Maple Leafs. And
played with the Oilers a little bit too and stuff. So.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Now you're with PHA going into your fourth season, or you had a great weekend last weekend beating Shattuck St. Mary's and with your U18 program. Let's talk about the season that you've got, some of your athletes, that bar of excellence. Where's it set at? What are some of the things culturally that you really put down for these fellows this year?
Yeah, I think our program continues to grow every year, which is awesome. I think that was what it's really attracted me to PHA, I think, is just growing a program and just seeing it evolve, and just, like Justin said, this is my fourth year here, and just looking back to where we were my first year, like 1 year out of COVID, to now, it's like it's amazing that it's only been 4 years. So, there's lots to be thankful for. The developing a culture is, we're really intentional with that at Prairie. We have, it's not just our hockey academy. We have a partner school in Briarcrest Christian Academy. And so the relationships and how we're treating people and all that is just extremely important. And it's really valuable for our young men to understand how important that is. We've had lots of conversations here as we kind of set the foundation for how we want to go about as a team and stuff like that. And I just, the relationships, we're talking about that today, is just how important, there's lots of things that go into a culture, but when you strip it all bare and you get down the nuts and bolts, it's relationships. That's really what it is just how you're treating people. And so really challenging them, because a lot of times, it's a lot of me, and so if we can have a different mindset of, how can I help others, and how can I go about that, that'll go a long way. So,
That's excellent. When you're, in this, going through the winter and into the springtime, and you got that recruiting mindset going on for next year, what are you looking for in a player to come play for you? Like what sort of sets the bells off to say, I gotta find a way to get this guy in my squad?
First of all, I think a lot of conversations go into it with coaches, parents, players. Try to find as many resources as possible to get an accurate account of these players. And so I'll never forget, and I loved when Lauren Mulliken comes out with our teams, because I put him on the spot because I know what he's going to say. And I ask him, Lauren, what's the first thing a coach or a scout, just from, he has a pretty good career, what are they looking for? And the players are always saying, well, speed or skill or strength or a shot and all this. And he just says, nope. And he's character. That's the first thing they're looking for. And so, I tell my players that all the time, because they want to know what scouts are looking for. And so it's important. I just even say, when we go to different tournaments or you go to games, like, you don't think that scouts and coaches are looking at how you conduct yourself in the hallways, or talking to your parents or things like that, or even if you don't think they're looking up your social media, like they do. Character is important. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is finding good teammates, good people, guys of high character. And for me, it is I guess a prerequisite for guys to know how to work hard. For me, I do think that's just really, really important. And then when it comes to the style in which we want to play with our team, I think is a lot of high tempo, high pace, high speed. And so guys that can skate well and can compete hard and can be great teammates, you can do a lot with players that have those qualities. So
I think you can get into Dustin's good books right away just by putting something in regarding blue collar. If you can do that on your hockey resume or anything too, it's a thing that Dustin and I go back and forth about lots. But he's got a point,
and rural.
Right
like anytime that we, any one of us other coaches, recruiters sign someone, the first question, is he farm boy?
That's right. Yeah, but I think that blue collar and that work ethic goes a long way. That's taught there. That you can adapt it so quickly with your style of play and what you're teaching as well on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, I think my new word is like obviously working hard. Everyone wants to work hard, but I think my new word is urgency. We've been talking about that a lot with our team, and it's one thing to work hard, but if you're not working smart, you're not going to go too far. And so I think that's been our new word is urgency, is working hard with purpose and with intent and with a plan. And so I think getting guys to really buy into that has been a good really good first step for our group so far this year. And
it's paying dividends. Like I said, last weekend you went to Winnipeg for an exhibition series, and you came back with 3 wins, including one against a storied franchise academy down in the U.S. that people might be familiar with because Sidney Crosby made them famous. Shattuck St. Mary's. You guys took the win out of there. What was the atmosphere like coming out of that game, and how did the guys feel going into it, and then coming out with the dub?
Yeah, I mean, guys are obviously really excited, and guys played hard. We were down 3-1 at one point in the game, and I don't think guys really knew what to expect playing. It's not a team we've played before and stuff, and so guys, it was good. I mean, it's the first game of the year, so I mean, there's lots of video and lots of teaching, and but guys competed and played with the structure and played the style that we kind of wanted to start with, and so I was really proud of the guys and how they played that game. And then also throughout the weekend, there's so much learning, and like with any team early in the season. And it was good. We went through some adversity as well, which is really positive because that's usually where you're learning the most. So, but yeah, we were fortunate. We kind of ended up on the right side for all 3. But we're gonna play some more really good teams this weekend, and so we'll have to play really well, and we're gonna get pushed. So it'll be good.
Being a captain wherever you've gone, having multiple degrees, people aren't going to be surprised to also know that you wear multiple hats at PHA. So you teach at the high school, you coach, the head coach of our U18 program, you're the director of performance, and we'll get into that in a second, and you're the rock star of the Prairie Performance Program in the summertime, and we'll talk about some of those stories too. But let's talk about the performance side in the High Performance Training Center at Can West, and what that facility is like and about, and the standards of excellence that you've got going on there. Yeah, I mean that was, I guess, our COVID project. I think that was a big thing for me, and just my time in New Brunswick is me, and I seen our team really buy into the strength and conditioning piece. And my coach there at the time, he wanted our program to resemble the U.S. college programs. And down there they're training, and they're training hard. And so I really kind of I guess really fell in love with the strength and conditioning piece of it, and so I knew how important that would be to a program. And like I said, we've grown a lot throughout the last 4 years, but that's been a really important piece to having a facility and a center where we can train as a team throughout the season. Then, like you said, an opportunity for players also train in the summer, and so not just for our program, but for the college athletes on campus as well. I think it's been really beneficial for their teams as well. So I think for a small spot like Prairie and Caronport to have a facility like that, we're really fortunate to have that. So.
Yeah, I think one piece for our listeners to know as well. I mean, this, like you said, it was our COVID project, and I remember walking through it for the first time with Zach. And I mean, maybe I should even tell, episode 9, we talked a little bit about our humble beginnings, at Prairie Hockey Academy, and we talked about some of the meetings with Briarcrest. And I never did mention Zach. We talked about the executive team and the leadership team at Briarcrest, but I mean, without Zach, I don't think Prairie Hockey Academy exists today, right? And so Derek Zacharias plays a pretty big history for us here as well, and he helped us walk through with Dustin, who ended up being the architect of the high performance training center now called Can West, and that was a blast. But at the same time, like some of the photos we go back and look at to look at the work that went into cleaning out what was a shop class at one point in time, and a shop class that hadn't been cleaned in a number of years. We're talking a shop vac on the walls to clean them, and then we mopped the walls, right? I think Dustin mopped the walls, and then I think he used spray 9 on the walls. And I remember coming out one Saturday just to try and find Dustin, and there he is in like a scissor lift in there, getting a shoulder workout, scrubbing the roof while his daughter's running around kicking a ball. Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of work and a lot of love that went into building that facility, and we get to benefit from it every day now. And it's so thank you for sinking that into it. Yeah,
no, I mean, obviously there's lots of people that helped out along the way too. So, but funny story, like Derek, Zach, and I, we were actually training partners. So he was my principal, but when I was playing junior hockey, I didn't really have anyone to train with, and so we'd get up at 6 a.m. We'd train in Waltheim, the basement of Waltheim School, where he actually brought a gym there, because that's what he did in his previous school, where he brought a gym there, and so it was this basement, no windows. It was just the bare bones kind of thing. And then the gym moved to like a portable, and that's where we trained together for a couple of years. And it was pretty neat that we had that opportunity to kind of build and design and kind of plan that together. But you're right. Without Zach, he put in a lot of work and to make that facility possible. So really, really thankful and appreciative of that. So.
One of our previous guests, Adrian Vlaka, who was the director of performance for Gary Roberts' training program out in Toronto. You spent some time with those dudes as well. They've come out and helped out at the facility. You've gone out there. You spent some time mentoring with them. Talk about that influence and how that's helped shape some of the stuff that's going on there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, he trained some of the best athletes in the world. Well, for sure, the best hockey player in the world. And so, just that opportunity to spend time with him and pick his brain and just how they do things. And so it's just, again, just that opportunity to kind of learn from others. And he's just a really solid guy too. He's open to share and just how they're doing things and stuff like that. So that was a really, really good experience. I guess also, like, just even when I was in New Brunswick, there's our strength and conditioning coach. His name was Ken Seaman, and I actually worked under him when I was still training. So when I was training for college and then when I was training for pro, I went back to New Brunswick, and then I was the strength and conditioning coach for the junior players then. And so I had experience doing that, and I really enjoyed that. So I guess our training programs, they come from a lot of different areas, some a little bit from what we did in New Brunswick, a little bit from what I learned, through pro in North America, a little bit through, when I was over in Europe, some different things there. And then also I think a big thing is, in the training center, we talk a lot about, is just like people come in and it's just like, oh, let's just lift weights. Well, if you're a high performance athlete, a lot of it is about injury prevention. And so that's probably the first thing that we do is it's important. Like if you're injured, you can't perform, you can't build muscle. And so we focus a ton on injury prevention. And then there's the performance side of it. And so where I'm going to with this is the injury prevention piece is I actually tore my ACL when I was in Chicago in the American League. And at the time, I thought that was the worst thing that could possibly happen to me. And it ended up being an open door for me in Europe after I got this healed up. But it actually led me to meet a physiotherapist in Saskatchewan. Her name is Jody Schwab, and she was an absolute genius. She blew me away with the information that she would give me, and how she looked at my body and how we the things that we did to correct my body. And honestly, I wouldn't have played for as long as I did if I didn't have her in my corner. The first appointment I would have when I came back from Europe would be I'd go see Jody, and then she'd do an assessment. She'd give me a list of things to do. I would do those things for the month, and I mean, I would do the workouts as well. But with her, it was some finer details. So whether it was mobilizing my right ankle, whether it was getting rid of some scar tissue in my forearm, whether it was, there's wear and tear that happens throughout the season. And so, she'd give me those exercises. I'd take care of those for a month. I'd go visit her again in a month, and we'd progress and we'd work on new things. And so we did that. I did that throughout my career. It would have been, for 7 years, I did that with her. And so, so now she's a good family friend, and I've lost to be thankful for her, just for, I guess, allowing me to have the ability to play for as long as I did. But now just it really helped me view training and in a different light and different perspective. And so it's amazing, the body and how it works together, and how it's connected, and how it's crazy. And so I learned a ton from her. So very thankful for that. So.
Yeah, and spoken like a true leader. You're giving lots of shout outs to people who've influenced your life, and that's fantastic to hear that side of those stories. We know that there's also people dropping your name and talk about the influence that you've had on their careers, especially through the Prairie Performance Summer Program. For our listeners out there, the summer months, the dog days of hot summers in Saskatchewan. Through our Prairie Performance Program, we got a college pro group, a junior group, a U18, a U15 group, 3 or 4 different groups that train throughout the summer with Dustin and his staff at the High Performance Training Center at Prairie Hockey Academy, and the program is called Prairie Performance. This year we've grown. This past summer we grew in volume, but I think more importantly we sort of grew in some stature, because there's some athletes that are starting to see some results. And as we alluded to here, you got a shout out on Sportsnet by one of your athletes from the summer, and I know even tonight you're getting some texts from some other guys there down in Long Island, and some of the results that they've got through you from training this summer. Talk about Prairie Performance, and talk about some of those the cheat codes that these athletes are using to get to that next level in their careers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any cheat codes for sure, but no, I mean, it's Prairie Performance. It's I guess it's part of what I really enjoyed when I was playing. I never got to the point where I could just train. I was always, it was either when I was coming home, I'd be working on the farm seeding, or I'd be doing some substitute teaching or something like that. It was never just training, which that's what I wish I could have done, but just with a family, that's not what it was. So I think trying to set up a program for these athletes when they finish their junior season, when they finish their pro season, is just to be able to provide a program for them where we kind of take care of as much as possible for their full summer training. And so I think, just looking at how Adrian and how they've kind of ran their program, and obviously we don't have the capabilities to take care of as much as they do. But we do the best that we can with what we have, and so and a lot of credit goes to the guys that come in and put the work in. We have a lot of players, returning players, who have been coming back to Prairie Performance for a number of years, and so they really have to buy into that. My first year with them, there's a lot of questions, and they weren't too sure. But we've been able to build a relationship where now those guys do trust me, and I think it's because they've seen results, and so now it's I guess it's kind of expanded and grown where whether they tell teammates or tell friends, and so they've but it comes down to them, and there's a ton of learning that goes into it. It's not just training. Like I said, it's injury prevention. It's correct movement patterns. It is getting the right muscles to activate. It's not just lifting weights. We do a ton of, we call it prehab, which is mobility, activation, and making sure the body's moving the right way. It's not just lifting weights. And so there's a lot of components that go into it. And hockey's a pretty interesting game. There's a lot of training variables that go into it, and a lot of time there's guys are coming in with injuries throughout the season, and so I was no different. Like Justin said, 1 year I broke my ribs, and I broke my tailbone, and so it goes on and on the list of and how you have to train and how you need to recover, and so and just honestly recovering from a season. And so there's so much that goes into it. And so our guys have got some really good results. We're really happy for them and proud of the work that they've put in. So,
yeah. And this is my first summer being around on campus, and the cheat code I refer to when I was hanging around with your older group was a couple of guys one day, they came out and they had another level of energy, and we interviewed a few of them, kind of getting them teed up for a podcast episode as well. And I'm like, what is different? Like, why are you driving an hour and a half to come here and train every day? What is it? And the one athlete said, I've never done I've been playing junior and pro for the last 10 years, and I've never done single leg lifts. And he's like, it's like I found a new cheat code. And so that's my reference point is like, what's that? That's your cheat code. Like, you're helping these guys with something new that is giving them explosiveness. It's giving them a huge increase in their test results when they go to pro camps. Like, explain the single leg lifts maybe.
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of other strength and conditioning coaches do single leg work, but we're just never just standing on two legs when we're playing hockey. It's like I said, there's a ton of variables that go into hockey, and so we do a lot of single leg work. We do a lot of stability. We do, like I said, a lot of activation, and it's. I think one thing that we've really incorporated is, with the prehab, with the lifts, with the single leg strength is our turf days too. So. It's kind of a mix of progressions of plyometrics that kind of coincide with our lifts and our phases as we progress throughout the year. And I do think I think some of the biggest gains that our guys have seen has been through their power, and a lot of them come to me with areas and goals, whether their trainer or whether their team says, okay, we want you to get better at this. And so that's what we focus on. And different players have different games, different bodies that they're coming in with. And so they all need something a little bit different. But I'm proud, for a guy like Reese Newkirk, is his first year with us, but to see how his single leg strength improved and just seeing the results he got at Islanders camp, and, to see Atlee's scores go up in power for 2 and 3 consecutive years. That's something that, we focused on 3 years ago. And now he was kind of surprised that it went up again, so those guys are just putting in the work and buying in. And, Ethan Peters, getting the highest assault bike time on his team. It's just guys putting in the work and yeah, I'm proud of those guys because and I guess the other thing is what I really enjoyed when I was training in New Brunswick is that we had a group like that where we had a group of pro, college, junior athletes that just that made that a priority, that understood the importance of training in the summer and how it would help their game in season. And so it is it is your team. It is your team in the off season. And so we have so much fun in there, the guys are excited to come, and it's not a social event. I don't want to put it that way, but it is fun, because they're pushing each other and they're enjoying doing it. So.
Yeah, that's probably part of the culture of excellence you've created right in that window, in that little bit of that summer team, in a lot of ways. And you named a few guys. Ethan Peters, you said top assault bike score. I think Atlee was telling us, I think he was the top shuttle score. A couple of these guys had 4-inch increases in their vertical. It's no secret that in this group, 50% of them or more, maybe we don't know the rest of what they did, but were the top in a score of a category at their camp. That's pretty cool. And I think that's probably because they all came out of a culture of excellence and they worked hard, right, as part of it. So, and those guys are all drivers. They're all captains at the same time.
No,
right?
I love that word, drivers. They are drivers, so you put a bunch of drivers in the same place, and it's going to be a pretty hard work and fun atmosphere. And so those, like I said, it's a pleasure to coach and train those guys because it's if anything, I need to pull them back. And I guess that's another component that's really important for our prior performance, but also for our academy students. Just the education piece is that, it's not just about lifting weights. There's so much more. And like I said, the movement patterns and activating the right muscles and letting the body recover. that's a huge component, which probably I think a lot of young athletes go the wrong direction where they're overtraining. And so then, overtraining leads to injuries and not getting the results that you can. So having the, allowing the body to recover and, through rest and through sleep and through the right nutrition and throughout hydration. And so those are areas that it's not, they just don't get those down. Those are habits that they need to develop. And so if you look at those, the older players within Prairie Performance, that they're looking for this to be a career. And so, obviously they're taking it much, much more serious, but, the sooner some younger athletes understand the benefits of that, and, they can have some pretty good results. So
prairiehockey.ca is the website. And we'll have those dates up there for Prairie Performance pretty soon. So make sure if you're out there listening and you're within an hour and a half drive or so of Carenport, or we've actually had athletes that found billets and stayed the summer because they felt it was so important. And so from the that U15 group all the way up to the pro guys, it might be a consideration for you out there.
That's right. We may not impact the housing market, but we're moving guys to Moose Jaw to train for the summer like Kelowna. It's cool. I think, one piece that's always dear to my heart, and we've talked about lots on this podcast, is leadership. And we're talking lots about leadership today with a leader here with Dustin. And we've talked about how Prairie Hockey Academy was founded on this principle of using the power of hockey to create life champions. And we teach leadership principles. And this began right in 2010 with a bunch of young kids and just trying to teach these principles. And they went on to being captains. I remember seeing some of them in their midget AAA and their junior teams, and it was really neat. And this was just a conversation I was having yesterday with Eric Robitaille, because you start to see right now people releasing their captain's classes, right, for their teams. And it was just neat to see two young alumni yesterday. One is Ashton Fishley, and named the captain of the Swan Valley Stampeders in the MJHL, and an alumni. And then another one was Liam McInnes, part of the Prairie Performance program, named a captain yesterday, the captain of the La Ronge Ice Wolves yesterday. And it's just really neat, and we'll have to maybe talk about this another time and grab a bit of an alumni list, but it's really fascinating. Again, just this idea that, if you teach these principles and we really focus on what Dustin was talking about earlier in relationships, right? And that type of culture, that when they leave here, this has been, it's invested in them, and it starts to come out at their new location, and they're leading there again. And we're seeing that impact, which is what it's about.
Absolutely. This next segment that we're going to jump into is our Guide and Provide segment, where we've had, lots of our previous guests have given some brilliant advice that, even for my own life, I've tried to implement a few things here and there when we're talking about what parents should be doing, or,
nutrition advice.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a couple
right.
ones there for me.
But even from the coaching side, we had with Bobby Lowe's some advice and whatnot. And speaking of Bob, actually next weekend, he's going to have the Stanley Cup in Regina. At I forget the pub there downtown. He's going to have it there. They're raising money for the Cancer Foundation, and you get your picture taken with the cup. And so it was really awesome to have Bob on, and just the advice that he came around to. And so one of the things that we want to just talk about here, Dustin, is and we'll get into some story time to wrap up, and talk about some of the brilliant guys that have given you some leadership over the years. But as a player, you've got a family that they're pretty good athletes, your kids as well, and so you can give some advice to parents as a young coach that's doing a great job and is well sought after. Some advice that you might have for coaches, but let's start off with some advice that you'd have for players. We're hearing captains get announced, teams are into their exhibitionists wrapping up, starting into the regular season. What is some advice that you would be able to give as a former captain of a junior team and a AAA team? What's some advice you'd give to a guy that's going into October of the thick part of their season?
I guess one of the biggest things that I wish that I would have I wish I would have learned the things when I was young that we teach here at Prairie, is just I would have considered myself a very resilient young man when I was playing junior and in college and pro. But looking back now, I think the biggest thing is just learning from mistakes and not being scared to fail. That would probably be the biggest one for me, where I do think think that the best athletes, they have this way of just learning from mistakes, not having that fear of failure, and not even viewing it as failure, because it's through those mistakes that you actually learn and actually get better. And so I think we kind of flip the script about that, and like, no, like if you make a mistake, oh, I'm no good, it's not that. It's like, that's an opportunity to learn. And so we've really tried to just switch the perception and switch the mindset, I guess, within our program and with my team. And that's not easy, because confidence is a pretty delicate thing, but I do think if we can kind of change the perception of it's an opportunity to learn, it's not, that will definitely help. And I think the other confidence piece is just preparation. I think that was really important for me in my career. That's one thing that I could control. That leads to the summer training and just having a routine throughout the season. The preparation, I think that instills confidence. If you know you're putting in the work, it's just and you're being consistent in practice. That just kind of, it's going to flow into a game. So I think that was one of the main things for me.
And what about parents? Like I said, you're a husband, a dad. You got some of your kids that are playing different sports. Is there some advice that you have out there for parents? Maybe, earlier you're talking about, some of the guys now that you can't even, swing a baseball bat or catch or throw a football. Like maybe, I don't know, is there some other advice out there you might have for a parent? No,
I mean, I think it's important that that hockey players are still athletes. They're not just hockey players. I think, there's been, I guess, a trend where, I guess, young hockey players, all they do is play hockey and all they do is skate. And, there's a lot of overuse injuries that can happen because of that. And, there's a lot of skill development that I think can be missed if we're not playing different sports. So, so even like, in our third term here with our guys, when the season is over, like we try to play every sport imaginable: baseball, beach volleyball, basketball, football, soccer, golf. Like it's so good for like hand-eye coordination, just having these different skill development opportunities. And so, and a big piece of that is sometimes you have overuse injuries, and so it's not it's longevity too. It's not just having the variation is really important. So
that's great advice when it comes to parents and players. But on the coaching front, you are a guy that like Justin was saying, he courted you for 3 years before he came over to coach at PHA, and you've done a brilliant job. What is some advice that you'd have for other young coaches out there that whether they're playing pro or not, maybe they didn't make their junior team and they don't want to go and ref, they want to get into coaching, and they love the game and they want to give back? What is some advice you'd give to that young man or woman that wants to get involved in coaching?
Yeah, I think just really being like a student of the game. I think that's one thing that I appreciated more and more throughout my career, and being a leader on my teams where I have lots of conversation with coaches. With my coaches, not just about the team, but also within our structure and things that we could adapt and what's working, what's not working, and stuff like that. So, so I really appreciated that part of it. So I think just really being a student of the game and understanding that. And I think a big thing for me even now is just, having mentors. And I've talked about some before, but another one for me, and he's been on the podcast, is JP, is just having someone to bounce ideas off of and maybe get new ideas from. And just having those conversations, I think, is really healthy. Just to view things in a different light sometimes. And just to kind of hash things out a little bit together. So I think those are two things that have really been positive for me. So
that's awesome. And now our final segment, and one I enjoy a lot, Grandpa B story time. And we haven't, not intentionally, I guess, left Gardner McDougall out of this, but I've sort of wanted to save him to the end because it's sort of like save the best for last.
We can't get through a podcast with Dustin Friesen without talking about Gardner.
Exactly.
Right?
Like just so many great things that the hockey world already knows about, Gardner. And when I talk about the book, by Sam Walker, Captain Class, if he's writing book number 2, I think he's got to do it on coaches that create a brilliant culture, and that Gardner would have to be someone that's up there in terms of having a discussion with this dude who continues to win year after year after year, and produce great guys like Dustin. So we probably could have 4 more hours of Grandpa B story time, just of you telling stories about Gardner. But is there, like, first of all, just talk about his impact and now, and how he has sort of shaped you from a coach to a man to a husband. And then we'll maybe get into a few stories that just, you're like, oh, this is only Gardner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I was originally, I wasn't even going out to New Brunswick. I was going to go to U of S, and so Gardner called me up, and he's a master recruiter. So yeah, it just again, I think doors open and close for a reason. And Gardner kind of, I think he instilled hope in me, where I was coming at the end of my junior career. I didn't have any pro offers, and I was kind of looking for something different. And I think he really valued the things that I could bring to a team, and he really believed in me. And so I can honestly say I would not have had the opportunity to go play pro if I wouldn't have gone out to New Brunswick. And so I owe him a lot. And so, but I learned a ton there at New Brunswick. Like my first year there, it was very, it was a good program. It was a good program, but it wasn't the program that it is now. And so I think throughout my 5 years there, I seen us go from an okay program to like one of the top programs, winning national championships. And so I think that's what excited me about coming to Prairie, is because I'm going through that experience in New Brunswick and seeing how they improved and how they evolved and how they just continue to build and raise the standards. And so that's what excites me about being at Prairie and being at PHA. But seeing Gardner and just even just seeing him evolve as a coach, I can remember my first 2 years, we were in our training camps, we were more like track athletes. We would do the beat test in the evening, or in the morning, we'd do 2 practices, and then we'd do a hill run in the evening. And we had this one hill run on campus in Fredericton. It's the campus is on a hill, and you run across the campus, then you run downhill on pavement for about 5 minutes, and guys are just sprinting down there because Gardner's standing at the top of the hill with a stopwatch. We'd run across the soccer field, and then we'd run up through this trail through the forest. And then you'd come up close to the arena where there's like a full-on sprint up there. And like I said, he was sitting there with the stopwatch. And so we would do that every year. But, he evolved, though. I think, like, for my first 2 years, we could kind of... we'd struggle once we hit November and December. And for me, when I'm looking at it now as strength and conditioning coach, we were probably overtrained and overtired. And now, later on, and when it was my 4th and 5th year, like I was telling Gardner, I think our practices need to be longer, because he evolved and he bought into this we got to work really hard, but we got to recover. We got to let the guys recover. And so just seeing him which isn't easy, like, I think everyone has a certain way of doing things, but for someone just to say, okay, I got to adapt, I got to change. And so, he's done a really good job of that. That's probably the biggest thing that I've kind of taken from him. And I think one thing that if you meet Gardner, you'll just know, is that he's just full of passion. He just cares, and he's passionate, and he gives the best introductions you've ever seen. I remember whether it was I was helping out with minor hockey or alumni or anywhere, just even my own teammates, he would give you the best introduction. Like you would leave that meeting or that conversation just stuck out, because he would just make you feel so good, because he would just nonstop pump your tires. And so he obviously he's been really successful, and just even seeing going from a national championship to win the Memorial Cup, that's probably something that'll never happen again.
Right. And
just so he really has a knack of just getting, and I think that's a bit of how I want our team to play, is just where I've kind of learned in New Brunswick, is that we want to play the high tempo and high pace, and I remember because that's a lot how he is. I remember my first practice with him, and I remember the guys telling me that, like, yeah, just follow along. And I'm like, what do you mean just follow along? Like, isn't there a practice plan? And he's like, no, there's not. You just follow along. And so I remember being completely lost the first couple of practices, because Gardner would just say, okay, now we're going here. Okay, now we're doing this. And guys they just did it. Like tempo, like practices were just so fast. And all of a sudden, guys were on either side of the wall, and 2 guys are jumping in the middle, and we're one-on-one full ice battles. And it was just, it was kind of controlled chaos. He knew what was going on, but anyways, it kind of spoke to just kind of that, just that pace and that tempo and that urgency and being on your toes. And so, I had a fantastic experience out in New Brunswick, and Gardner was a huge part of that. So,
oh, that's great. My connection, I back in my days when I was working with Hockey Ministries International, setting up chapel programs with the Junior A programs when Gardner was in some SJ and MJ stomping grounds. Had some chances to interact with him there, but the story for me that stands out was. Just right as COVID was, taking root and everything was getting shut down, I was at Trinity Western University, and we had just gotten approved to move from the college ranks to the youth sport ranks. And I remember the fear of that process in terms of, the increased budget and the increased, level of competitiveness and the athlete and stuff like that. And talking to my athletic director, just saying, how are we going to build this? How are we going to do it? What budget are we going to look at? Are we looking at, Lethbridge's budget and comparing that? Or are we looking at, U of S and U of A and UNB? And he said, no, whatever you can do, we need you to investigate and find out all you can about U of S, U of A, UNB, and find out what their budgets are and how they do things and how they recruit. And so COVID was a great reset, because I think that might have been the only time I could get an hour and a half of Gardner's time. Talking to him on, I was sitting on the patio at my condo there in Vancouver, and just listening to Gardner talk, and through the phone across the country. Couldn't have been further apart from each other within our country. And he talked about this culture of excellence that you have alluded to. And when it come down to recruiting, and everyone knows that Gardner's a great recruiter, he said, you know what, Barrett, the best advice that I can give you is recruit captains. And that has always stuck with me. I'm like, wow, like what? Shocking. Like, I don't know why, I didn't think of this sooner. Like, maybe I'm giving now cheat codes to all the other coaches in youth sport, but everyone knows that Gardner gets great leaders because he has a great culture. But when it comes to, what we've talked about here, and obviously it's no surprise that, you were one of his athletes that helped him turn the program around out there, and with a culture of excellence and, having that captain class mentality. But, even, today, with our U15 team, we announced our captains and our leadership group. And it's such a fun time of year because you see so many leaders that could potentially have a letter on their jersey. And I feel bad actually for some of the guys that, that you not leave out, but it's sort of like you can't have an A on everybody. My wife actually joked about it at lunch today. She said, well, let's just put an A on everyone's jersey, because that's just the way my wife just loves on everybody so much that way. But in terms of just being able to identify who your captains are and empower them to be leaders and carry that culture, to me as a coach, that's one of the funnest moments of the year.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you tell a story about that Gardner recruited captains, because he's told me that before, for sure. I think one thing that is really important, and I think it's kind of stuck with me, like that he did recruit captains, is just the concept of just group leadership. Is that you're gonna have your captains, you're gonna have your assistants, but everyone's going to lead in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I think you need that within a room, because it's not just going to always be the captain. It can't always just be the captain. It can't just be the assistant captains. It needs to be, and it needs to be guys who are going to lead by actions. It's going to be guys who's going to step up when something needs to be said. Yeah. And I'll never forget, his name is Josh Heptich. He was a first year, and I was the captain at that time. We had lost to, it was my third year, and we lost to Moncton, and Moncton beat us, I think 6 of the 7 times, and Moncton just beat us in the finals. And we were going to the national championship. We were pretty down because we lost in the finals of our league, but we ended up getting a bye now to national finals, and so or national championship. And so Moncton was hosting that year, and I'll never forget. Josh Heptis, we were all sitting there down, and he goes, he said, guys, I've been in this experience before, with his junior team in the past. He's like, this team beat us. Most of the season, but we ended up beating them in nationals. We can do this. We're going to beat them one time. And so, sure enough, we played Moncton in the national final. We beat them in overtime, and it's probably the biggest game wise, probably one of the most exciting games ever, because we were a bye team to get in there, and they were the number one ranked team throughout the all year, and so it was my first national championship there, but it came from a first year, so stepping up, and I'd gone through an experience, and it instilled belief in our team, and I mean. It wasn't any of the captains that said it. It was another player. So that stuck with me for a long time. Is that it needs to be group leadership, and everyone's going to provide that in different ways. So
yeah, and I had when we announced our group today, actually right in the middle of their high performance training, we took a quick little time out to celebrate that group, and then I noticed actually one of the guys that just he just kind of went and grabbed the weights and was throwing them around a little bit harder than he normally would. And I just, I challenged him, and not maybe challenge, I just came alongside and I said, listen, you can lead without a letter. Like, you don't need a letter to be a great leader. And I think that's a story that you just relayed there, is that when you have a true group of leaders like that are wearing your season A's, everybody has the power to be a leader on that team. There's no one that's, put up on a pedestal. It's group leadership. It's that mindset that we're all leading and pushing each other to that level of excellence. Yeah,
for sure. I know. I think it's important for teams and athletes to know, because not everyone's going to wear a letter, and there's lots of times in my career where I didn't wear a letter either. And so, but I think you still need to have that belief, and it's important that every player feels valued, and that they bring value to a team. I mean, that's one of the biggest jobs of a coach, is to get players to believe that and to know that, and no different in leadership, that everyone brings a different style of leadership and a different impact in leadership, and it's important throughout the whole team. So
I think this would be, probably for another podcast episode, but one of the systems we implement is called the Captain's Council, and it just speaks to that, right? Creating, groups of leaders inside of that room, and I mean, that's something we might be able to unpack one day on a shorter episode, just to empower maybe some coaches and others in multi-sport to have a tool that they could use throughout their season as well to create that team-led culture.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of even for us coaches, if listening to our players is really important, because they're going to have some really good ideas that we're not going to think of. They're in their dressing room. They're in each of those games. They know, they'll have some pretty good ideas too. So I think having the openness and willingness to listen is important. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, to our listeners out there, we're thankful that you've joined us for our 11th episode of the Win All Day Every Day podcast. I've had a ton of fun here the last hour, just having a fireside chat with the three of us. Has been a fantastic evening of just learning from each other, talking about what it means to be a captain, what it means to be about leadership and chasing excellence, whether it's at the minor hockey level all the way through the pro, whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach. I think that everybody has a chance to be a leader, right? It's something that, Justin, you talk about often, and everyone does, truly. And so as you're out there and listening tonight to your podcast of episode 11, our challenge to you is you've got the chance to be a leader, and we encourage you to step up and be a leader in your day today, and continue to choose excellence. We will be back next week, same time, same channel, and we look forward to having you back on the podcast for episode 12.